I think we can take it up from there. Welcome everyone to our panel, our breakout session, that is Regulatory and PV. And with me, I'm going to be joined with a few people from the industry, most of them you know, and we're going to get to know them just a bit, yeah? So before we begin, just a few ground rules and announcements. We would like to take this opportunity to thank you for your participation in this session. All the participants are going to be muted during the course of this session. We request you to ask all your questions via the Q&A tab at the bottom of your window, and the questions should be addressed to all the presenters. For PSK members, if not already done so, please remember to subscribe on the PPB portal for the conference so that you get your CPD points. Your CPD points will only be awarded after you become a paid up member. For KPA members who may be attending this session, your attendance list shall be shared with your officials for award of the CPD points. Please note that this session is going to be recorded and will be made available at the PSK YouTube page. So with that, I would like to introduce you to what we have with us, what we've shared. Just to get to know me, my name is Dr. Wangui Mathenge. I'm the current founder, CEO, and contract PPV at PVCC Consulting. And I'm currently also serving as an executive leader at the newly founded ISOP Africa chapter. I'm going to be the co-host for this session, and I'm going to be joined by my colleague, Dr. Wairimu Njuki. And at this point, I would like to hand over to her just to take us through what we have in store for you. Wairimu?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Wairimu Njuki Mbogo. I'm very happy to be a co-host and excited to be co-hosting this session. And my objective is to make sure that we get the best out of what PV and RA looks like for the industry and for the future. I am the director of Meraki Healthcare. Now we used to be Mercury Healthcare, but now we are Meraki Healthcare. As a professional, I am a pharmaceutical regulatory supply chain and operations expert, or I consider myself one, being in the industry for many years. On a personal level, I am a mother and a wife and a pharmacist as well. And thank you for being here. Yeah, and I think the next step will be now to continue to let the panelists also introduce themselves, and this is what we expect you to talk about yourself briefly. We have a 1-hour session, and there's a lot to talk about. And I feel that we shall leave the Q&A. We shall leave the 15 minutes for the Q&A. So thank you so much for joining. And yeah, let's make it as interactive as possible. Yeah. So we'll start with Dr. Eva Amwai.
Hi. Can you see me? I've put on my video. I don't know if I can be seen. So hi, I'm Dr. Eva Amwai, of course, the conference convener. Karibuni nyote for this breakout session. I'm the head of regulatory affairs in the consumer business for East Africa. And on my core responsibility there is to be like the functional regulatory expert and a business partner to just ensure that when they want to introduce new drug products or new consumer products, I provide the strategic regulatory affairs directions on those new products or ongoing projects. So my work is basically to be responsible for regulatory compliance of products end to end. So from the day they are registered, or rather from the day there's the conception of idea of registration until they get to the patient. So anything that involves the regulatory in every process that is there, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's distribution, whether it's importation, I'm the go-to person for that. Yeah, so basically I am the trusted advisor. If you want to put it in normal terms, I'm the trusted advisor to all the functional partners that I work with, and my knowledge in pharmacy as a pharmacist really helps me to give this advice. Yes, so that's what I do. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is, hello? Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can
All
hear
right.
you.
All right, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Dershi Shah. So I work at Novo Nordisk. I head the Pharmacovigilance department, and I represent 49 countries within Middle Africa, or also known as Sub-Saharan Africa. And in my day-to-day job, it's basically I deal with case processing, I deal with upcoming regulations, being a strategic partner within my company, within my organization, dealing with my local partners as well as my global partners to give them advice or just to guide them on the regulations and also on regulations in Middle Africa. And we continuously work on developing our existing regulations and how to also partner with health authorities to ensure that that we live up to their expectations. Thank you.
And then now we'll move to Dr. John Mwangi.
Good morning, everyone. Rather, good afternoon, sorry. So my name is Dr. John Mwangi. I'm also known as Dr. John Murithi Mwangi because some may know me by other name. I'm responsible for quality assurance and regulatory affairs for a company called Bayer. I'm responsible for markets in East Africa and West Africa. What I do on a day-to-day basis, I'm also the company pharmacist for Bayer East Africa. What I do on a day-to-day basis is to basically ensure, together with other colleagues and other functions, that the organization maintains the license to operate. And you maintain the license to operate, first of all, by being in line with the requirements of the countries we're operating. As far as medicines regulation is concerned. Secondly, also internal requirements, but also thirdly, to make sure, for instance, the products are introduced, and once they're introduced in the markets, that they are also maintained correctly. So if there are any changes that are done to the products, to make sure that those changes are approved or addressed, and also finally implemented in the products that you finally find in the market. Beyond that, I also participate actively in policy topics because, especially working in our markets here, there is constant change in the regulations and the requirements, and it helps to be also actively engaged in that space where then you can at least put some input give some input towards crafting of new requirements and regulations. So yeah, so that would be me.
Okay, and finally, Dr. Jesh, you can introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, fellow panelists, moderators, and all those attending this stream. Thank you so much for joining. So Jayesh Pandit, I work at Bayer as well, just like John, and cover Middle Africa, our 42 countries. That's East, West, and Central. And I'm in charge of this very interesting concept, not very new, very old in reality, but something that's yet to catch up with most people. And that's to do with patient safety. If your medicines that you take don't give the desired effect that is required by the healthcare provider as well as you as the patient, then that is the topic that we look at in pharmacovigilance. And I also act as a QPPV, that's a qualified person for pharmacovigilance for the area. So typically, yes, patient safety is the first key role that I play on a day-to-day basis, receiving any adverse effects if they are, working with our partners, working on various programs that we may have implemented, train our people, train externals on why pharmacovigilance is important and how they can make a difference to patient safety. And through all this, in a summary, I look at maintaining the medicine that Bayer has in the market. Because any medicine for any company, if it is not adding value, if it's not helping to restore health or improve health, then that medicine may not be needed. So patient safety key, and then looking at the longevity of our medicines. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for introducing yourself. I think we'll just go right into the topics. I think one of the things that we also wanted to hear from you is what you like about what you do, which can come into as part of the discussion, and also how you face challenges. But I think moving on to the topic, it's more of to ask, what is the role of RA? So for those in the breakout session, the two people who shall be dealing with RA are Dr. Eva Mwai and Dr. John Mwangi. And then the two people who shall be dealing with PV topics specifically are Dr. Jayesh and Dr. Dashi. Yeah. So the first question would be, what do you feel is the role of RA or PV in relation to the primary healthcare or primary healthcare, health products and technologies, digital health research and innovation in the era of COVID-19, and also in healthcare as an investment. And I think the person to start off this discussion, we said with the ladies, I think we'll start with Dr. John Mwangi, and then now we'll move to Dr. Eva Amwai. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I hope you can still hear me well.
Yes, you can. Yes,
I think. Okay, good. Regulatory, I think, plays a very important role, and I think we have seen it also during this period of COVID-19. And while maybe we're also dealing with those topics locally, I think it's also, you know, the same impression we get also when you look at other markets, that regulatory, first of all, is a gateway for the products to be available to the market. Regulatory is also helping, especially when there is unclear ways of working. During the pandemic, we saw even agencies closing. So regulatory has to come in and find a way of, you know, still making sure that there's business continuity. There is a lot of negotiation required, but it's also a lot of, you know, working and discussing things with an out of the box kind of mentality, because like we normally see, most cases, no single day is the same. With another one, when you're dealing with regulatory matters, it's also interesting to see, and this also came into play during COVID-19, that if you look at what the different countries are doing, we in regulatory are also able to, you know, make suggestions also to our local regulatory authorities on some of the things we are seeing as what we are calling flexibilities, to make sure that the products continue being available for the patients. So to that extent, then I think, yeah, regulatory came in handy during COVID-19. I think also in the normal day-to-day running of the businesses, it's a gateway to introducing the products in the market, but also keeping them in the market, because most of the time we forget that it's not just a time to bring the product and the registration timelines that we talk about, but also the time it takes to keep the products in the market, you know, filing variations, having them approved, discussing them with the regulatory authorities. And above all, also shaping the policy topics, especially with the new regulations which tend to come up, either coming from the regulatory authorities themselves or even coming from other stakeholders suggesting what regulations should be in place. So maybe Eva, you can also add something here, but that's how I see the role that we have played in regulatory as far as business continuity during COVID-19 is concerned.
Eva, you can take it up.
Yes. So in addition to what John has said, because I do not want to repeat each and everything he has said, but I'll just summarize. There is availability of product, which equates to access, right? He's talked about, of course, policy and advocacy. Regulatory affairs has played a really big role in right now, during the pandemic, we were actually like the in-between person between our companies and the regulatory authority. We talked about how are we going to keep our products available for the patient, that is pharmacists. Are they going to be open? Our products, are our supply chain and the trucks, are they going to be allowed to keep going during past curfew? So we did engage in such like things over and above our normal work. We did talk about, he has talked about license maintenance, how we engaged PPB to ensure that, yes, they keep looking at our new products, they keep looking at the new molecules that are coming in to, help with the pandemic, and also the other quote unquote diseases that were not being, that were necessary, are actually important for us to introduce new molecules for, but are not in the limelight because of COVID. So in other aspects, as he has talked about in policy, I think from a primary healthcare point of view, I think the most important thing that has happened this year for us is the scheduling guidelines. And they have, PPB has come up with a draft scheduling guidelines, and these scheduling guidelines is actually going to address a lot of issues that we have, quote unquote, with the access part, with the practice part, and with the registration part. So when it comes to access, it actually addresses these draft guidelines, of which we commented on, so they are not final. It actually addresses how the patient will be able to access the product, whether it's going to be through a normal shop, a pharmacy, a supermarket, a hospital, a doctor's office, and so forth. It also addresses information that should be availed to the patient, and many more other things, right? I can talk about scheduling because I'm very passionate about it. But that's what I feel regulatory affairs can do more over and above their normal day-to-day work to ensure that each and every Kenyan accesses, product and can access healthcare in any system and in any level of life they're in.
Maybe I can also add just one little thing also, which also came up during the COVID-19. We saw regulatory agencies, Kenya also included here, coming up with emergency use guidelines. And I think this was very important thing to see because it created another pathway for at least certain products being available. There was discussion about chloroquine and all these other products. And I think wherever regulatory affairs was tried to, be the link with the regulatory authorities to provide the limited information which was available, as the case could have been. Because of course, the authorities were also under pressure to find anything that could work for the patients. So this is also something we saw that, regulatory affairs played a very important role. It was also evident that agencies were also sharing notes. So in addition to emergency use authorization, we also saw like new flexibilities that agencies looked at some of the critical processes they were going through for many years and decided the ones that don't have value adds. And we in regulatory got into that space to, advocate that some of them should actually be, maintained. And we are seeing a positive trend towards that, especially among the African countries. So I thought also to bring out that. There's also the element for self-care, and maybe Eva will touch on that a little bit later, which I think even we as pharmacists need to be, at the center of it, because we saw patients not going to their physicians, not going to their hospitals. So how do we also, as pharmacists, empower the patients? How do we make sure that the products that we have, that they are labeled in a way that patients can be able to, self-manage themselves, that at the very least also at least they can go to the pharmacy and get their medication if the hospitals are not anymore taking up patients. And that also came to the doorsteps of the regulatory affairs professionals. Thank you, Wairimu, you can continue.
Yeah, so I'm sure Wairimu is working on something else. I would like to also introduce the same topic to the PV panel, so that they can just take us through what PV has done, especially in the pharma industry, with regards to the current pandemic that is COVID-19. What are how does PV plug into primary healthcare, the healthcare products, technologies, digital health, research, and innovation? So I would like to take this topic and invite both Jayesh and Dashi to just talk about their role.
Dashi, you would like to go first, or should I go first?
Jayesh, you can take it up, and then I can add on.
Okay, great. So thank you, Wangui. I mean, when we look at the fact that we are talking about medicines, health products, and technologies, if these are not safe, then that remains the bottom line. If you don't put the right ingredients into your ugali and sukuma wiki, you will never get the right taste of that ugali and sukuma wiki. On the contrary, if you put wrong ingredients, bad ingredients, then it can remain harmful. So I approach the same thoughts and bring them into patient safety. If the molecule that we are looking at, the healthcare products that we are trying to introduce, the new technology that we are trying to bring in, if there is no element of safety, quality, and efficacy in this, then there is an inherent risk that our patients will suffer not just from the disease, the ailment, but also more from the harm that the medicine itself can cause, because no medicine can we say is 100% safe. If I look at the broader aspect, then we've got not just the use of the medicines in the conditions at the right dose, but also you would expect in such a pandemic situation, then medicines are being used off-label, right? What John was trying to allude to. If you've got medicines being used off-label, then really speaking, we've never had data, we've never had an understanding of this medicine in this pandemic time or in this disease. So everything that we are trying to collect here is new information. A COVID patient may be pregnant, right, to add on, or it could be a very young child, and this medicine has never been used in such a population before during clinical trials. So yet again, we are trying to get as much new information out of this as possible. And the bottom line remains, how can we do all this the right way? Then I would say it is through training, onboarding people, making people aware about pharmacovigilance, and continue to do this across our daily life as a pharmacovigilante, and especially step this up during times of such off-label use and use in newer populations. So pharmacovigilance, I strongly believe and I advocate that this remains an investment in healthcare. That way we ensure that our patient outcomes are as expected that we have. And I am so convinced and always believe that, yes, it is a role that should be done by everybody, but more so that the pharmacist here is the most ideally placed to do this. Because having gone through our pharmacy school, you and I, we both have a very well-balanced knowledge of the medicines that we are talking about today during different uses, and we have the disease background, the ailment that our patients are going through. And that fine balance, when we put it into a third perspective, that why did this doctor prescribe this medicine for this illness in this patient, then you and I, pharmacists, are the most ideally placed to look at this. That's my submission. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Jayesh. Dashi, maybe if I can bring it up to you a notch higher. I know COVID has introduced a new way of doing things. We are no longer meeting one-to-one, and I'm imagining the same has also cascaded all the way till the primary healthcare level. How has technology, or what are the ways that PV has played in enhancing and ensuring that recording of PV issues are still ongoing? Also,
thanks.
thanks.
Yes.
Also, for all other participants, please also note that we are recording on the chat. If you look at the chat, I'm also putting a bit of summary. If you have any questions, please put all your questions in the chat box and we will be able to answer it from there. Thanks.
Thanks, Wangoi. Thanks. Thank you. So basically, when you look at this era of COVID-19, it's brought in a lot of digitization, of changing our ways of working, our normal ways of working. I mean, once we receive a report, thankfully, we had the new guidelines from PBB issued in April, but we had already implemented online reporting as well. We have those platforms. So if we were not able, how do we still continue doing what we need to do, making sure that we report, we actually abide by the guidelines set out by the health authority, knowing that PPB did not shut down per se, but we were also like, you know, how do we continue making sure that we live up to our responsibilities set out in the regulations? So that was the whole thing. I mean, looking at a multinational, it's easier in most cases. We have both the paper-based system as well as the online system of documentation. But if you look at other, more so in a local setup, it may be that at that point that we mostly have a paper-based system. How do we then transform to, or how did we transform to this online way of working? So basically that was a lot of, there have been companies that have really been working hard on making sure that even though we can't, in times of COVID-19, make our submissions in person via paper, we have methods. And thankfully, yes, I really appreciate the fact that we have platforms set up by PPB that we could send these reports to them so that we ensure that we have reported any adverse events within the stipulated timelines. And then when we look at it, we also have our own internal procedures to look at, such as audits and inspections. So inspections more so are health authority based. And when we look at audits, how have we transformed from face-to-face to remote-based? So I think we'll go into the next session and next bit, and I can continue my discussions there.
Okay, thank you so much for that insight. For the four of you, I think there's a lot to take out. I think what we want to know now is what has the industry been like, very briefly, 5 years ago, what is happening now, and what do we want to see 5 years into the future, and how does this impact the different things you have talked about. I heard you talking about digitization, you talked about technology, you talked about access. So what would you want to see, and what has been in the past? And I think this is where you could also talk about challenges. Challenges for the region, both in RA and in PV. I think because we don't have so much time, we'll give RA panelists 5 minutes, and then we'll give the PV panelists 5 minutes. Yeah. So maybe we could start with Dr. Eva Amwai.
Okay, so
Yes.
I'll try to take this
2.5 minutes.
2.5 minutes. I will try. This is a challenge,
Yes.
considering I like talking a lot. But,
I know.
But just to reflect back 5 years ago, I feel like RA has come a long way. We've been doing frog limbs and frog jumps, if I must use metaphor, to just describe how much improvement there has been. We are not yet where we want to be. Yes, it's a given, but we have done a lot since. I can just tackle a few things and then leave the rest to John. So first and foremost, harmonization. In East Africa, Kenya, we sit in East Africa harmonization, grown in the way they are now, now we can submit our dossiers and our drug product information to EAC. The headquarters is in Arusha. I am seeing there is also an improvement in that EAC system. Long ago, they used to take a long time to even evaluate one product. Now the timeline has reduced and there's more efficiencies. I find like, yes, there is the teething problems, but they are trying. There's also IGAD, which has come up, and they've included East African countries plus Ethiopia. So I don't know if South Sudan is there, I stand to be corrected, but there's Ethiopia there. So you see, harmonization, one thing that has improved. 5 years ago, it was not there. We were all struggling to do our own thing with the separate NRAs, but now we can plan accordingly and use EAC or IGAD, right? Especially for the diseases that are quite, prominent in our tropicals, so HIV, TB, and the rest. There's also very new guidelines. I think we are really referencing a lot of what is in the European and Canadian and Australian health authority regulations. And we are seeing a lot of revisions of rules and regulations, guidelines, hence the scheduling guidelines. It comes up again in my talk, hence the scheduling guidelines, which of course, to me, working in a consumer company, I will touch about self-care policy. And this is one thing that maybe I would like to see in the future, especially for not only East Africa, but all of Africa, seeing that self-care, right now we've seen the last year, what has happened. It's very prominent. Everyone's trying to Google, see what they can buy online, delivery online, everything. So self-care, patient information, how to register a drug that has been proven that has a good safety profile. We want those self-care policies to be implemented in our country so that we have this regulated safe space for our patients and also for us as practitioners to have a safe space for us to be able to regulate these products and also dispense these products. The other thing I must say that 5 years was not so aware of was training as RAs. I think, and when I think I started out quite a long time ago, but right now with Array, there's a lot of training options. There's a lot of, you know, we can go to Europe, we can even have online classes. There was, I think, a program that was being run in Arusha at some point, but I don't know if it's still there, to just help us know about pharmaceutical development of products, what to put in a dossier. So I feel like harmonization, new policies and new guidelines, and the awareness part of education has really come a long way, right? So, and what I want to see in the future is more policies that address our current problems. One of which I've said is self-care. Yeah. So I think the rest to John.
Okay. Okay. John?
Yes, thank you. Like Eva mentioned, I think there's been quite some evolution the last 5 years. We saw, for instance, setup of new systems of regulating drugs. I think in Kenya, for instance, introduction, although this is now close to 10 years now, of CTD guidelines, which was more a complete shift from what was there before. You know, it's what I would call actually professionalizing regulatory affairs, even at the level of regulatory authorities, which is also a reflection of how far, for instance, PPB has come and grown, and continues to be actually one of the leading agencies in the region. One other thing which is also closely related to that is also digitization, or whichever term you can use. But we saw a situation where we used to take files to PPB and many other regulatory authorities, but nowadays everything you do from you can do almost everything from the comfort of your home or your desk or your office. One other thing, and I'm speaking very fast so that because of time, is the whole idea for globalization and what I would call in our context here Africanization. Because if you think about what Eva has said about harmonizing requirements, it's no longer each country has its own small, tiny way of doing things, but countries are coming together and doing things in one standardized way. I think it was also mentioned by one of the panelists in the earlier sessions plenary. And what specifically is happening is also the whole topic for formation of a regional health authority, Africa Medicines Agency, which I think would also provide quite some opportunities for us as pharmacists, as regulatory affairs professionals. And it's something that I would request everyone here to keep an eye on. The process is currently underway. I think now we have 5 countries which have ratified. Rwanda is one of them. I think it was the first one. We have about 10 to go, so that then there will be an agency called Africa Medicines Agency. This will not replace, for instance, the national ones. It will come to complement them. So one other thing that we have seen is there is a break away from the traditional one way of regulating drugs to what we call alternative pathways. One of the buzzwords currently is actually about reliance, which means how can a health authority in one side of the world rely on decision, or not rely on decision, but make reference to the decisions made by another agency to make their regulatory sovereign decisions in their own country. And I think this is something that we'll see more and more of this happening. Yeah, one other thing, other than alternative pathways, is also, I guess also from the industry perspective, regulatory has ceased to be just operational function, but also has become quite strategic function, because if you think about the things we've mentioned, working digitally, fulfilling new guidelines, which are a little bit more complex than in the earlier cases, you know, making decisions which regulatory pathway to go through. Do you go through a reliance process? Do you go through, for instance, a joint assessment process? Do you go through WHO pre-qualification, accelerated pathway of approval? All this is requiring professionals who are also able to understand strategically what needs to be done for each of the products which is under development. I think I would not like to finish without saying what roles the pharmacist can play and can continue to play in the future. And in this case, also to highlight some of the attributes that I think are very crucial. Because like I mentioned, that it's changed. Anyone who was working in regulatory 10 years ago, if they came back today, it would be a completely different ballgame. And then that means it's important also for us as professionals to be in line with the times. Some of the things that from a personal perspective that I have identified that we need as attributes for us to continue being fit for purpose here, one of them would actually be people management. You realize pharmacy gets you into the game, but what keeps you there also is how you're able to interact with the other functions. If you work in a regulatory authority, for instance, you're not only working there as pharmacists, you see all these topics, they're coming to take our products, and you know, the other professionals. And I think we cannot run away from the fact that we need to work with other people. If we also work for commercial organizations, it goes without saying that you have to do that. Closely related to that is that we must be business savvy. You may be working in regulatory affairs, you're only dealing with technical topics, but you have to understand the business where you work. And that's not only for those people in industry, but it is also equally true for those who are working in regulatory authorities, PPB and the rest. One other thing, of course, we must be digitally enabled, for lack of another word. Like I mentioned, Kenya is one of the pioneer countries to go online, but we keep seeing many more agencies going online. So the things we used to do before, printing documents, taking them through local agencies, you'll be able to do that from Kenya and work for applications in Tanzania. It's already happening. So we really need to be very digitally enabled, so to say. Then I think exactly. One other thing, of course, is our ability, and I think we all have it here, to be able to manage complexity. These things, it means, for instance, if you have to follow alternative pathways, you have to negotiate internally with various functions, business, other technical functions. And also when you go to the health authority, you also have to, you know, discuss what are the timelines involved, which is the best pathway to follow. And this brings in a lot of complexity, but also brings in what I would call opportunities also for us to be able to avail the products
like
in a much more efficient way. Finally, I think there's also the whole idea for being able to work across cultures. I just mentioned, even if you think about just Kenya and Tanzania, so if you're a regulatory professional, you're not only now anymore for Kenya only, you have also to think about working cross-culturally, and finally also the ability to negotiate. One final word is, especially if we have people from academia here, I think it is important to start tapping into the industry so that we have an opportunity to speak to our students when they're still in school and explain to them what it takes to work in regulatory affairs, what it is all about. Because a lot of people, and this question was asked when we were starting this discussion, how did you end up in regulatory affairs? A lot of people, it's by chance, but I think we need to make it a little bit more deliberate. So I want to stop there because my time is up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Maybe the PV team can take up the discussion. I know Jayesh has been part of this for many years. Yeah.
Are you trying to say I'm too old?
No. You are the father of establishing PV in this country.
Nice.
So we'd want to hear what the dynamics have been, especially the evolution of PV in this country and where we are headed.
I think just to be on point form, to be very precise, I would say 5 years ago there was less digital. Today and onward, it's going to be even much more digital. Digital, I don't mean the fact that you know how to do Facebooking and WhatsApping, that means you are qualified. No, there are lots of databases and application programs that we use in the pharma industry. So we'll be using much more of that. There'll be, currently when we collect the reports and manually feed and type them in, I believe there's going to be a huge shift where artificial intelligence is going to read the report and directly enter this, and your trends and signals will be identified even quicker, again, through digital, and reporting to the authorities based on their guidelines, on their requirements, it's going to be digital. The second thing I would say, 5 years ago, especially in the field of Africa, we had fewer guidelines. Now with what John and Eva have been saying, that we are going to become one Africa Medicines Agency, one continent together, there's going to be more guidelines coming up. We've already seen them, and these guidelines are becoming stricter by the day. We mentioned briefly QPPV roles, so there's going to be much more on that that we will see. And data privacy, I believe, is going to be a key game changer for Africa. It started already. And this work from home policies, again, for Dershi and I, John and Eva, all of us to kind of step back and think, gosh, if this is what we are doing right now, I'm sure kind of workload has increased. And how are we going to manage this so that we have a good work-life balance ourselves, we remain healthy, and how does this change the dynamic on what our authorities want? And in hindsight, I would say if we project ourselves first 5 years, so we are in 2025, 2020 already, for example, and now we think that, gosh, when these guys had the pandemic, what did we use? We used a lot of hand washes, we used a lot of soaps, we used a lot of medicines that was never used before. So all those cases are going to be coming up. This is how I look into the future, if you would say. So how are we going to be doing this? We need to really document all those tiny items today so that we are better placed 5, 10 years next. And I strongly believe that we will be looking more and more into patients, asking patients, engaging them into pharmacovigilance activities, and ultimately this is where everything comes up. So if there are healthy patients who are going to be talking to us what is happening, I believe there will be more patient support programs, more patient involvements, and ultimately bring that application, online reporting, digitalization back to the patient. Over to Dershi. I'm sure I've forgotten much more, but Dershi can cover.
Maybe Dashi, you can talk about what you have seen, what your experience is, and now moving forward, what you see for the future and the current, especially the challenges that you faced, because I know you have been in this field not for a very long time, but with good experience. And I think you need to highlight the challenges you have faced.
Okay, so thanks for that. Coming from an RA background and in the field, I mean, not that even from the RA perspective, we knew what PV was all about and how it goes on within our country and our neighbors as well, and within organizations as well. So currently with the pandemic, I would say there's been a lot of uptake of digitalization, even within within individual organizations. I mean, we've been used to, be it RA, be it PV, we've been all used to face-to-face audits within, from our global teams, or also from pharma companies coming to audit distributors. So it was more of a face-to-face conversation. I mean, they'd physically come to your location, do it. But now we see health authorities as well. It's not exactly, I wouldn't say it's exactly started here in Africa, but we've seen it happening in Europe, basically mainly due to the pandemic. Everyone is adopting the remote audits and inspections, which are more focused. So it's not that they come to audit or inspect everything. They come with a focus, especially for audits and where your local representation has been audited previously. So it's more of a focused form of an audit. They will come and check something, or rather set up a remote audit just to check specific things, and also to see how you have been continuing with your requirements or what you need to do as per your written local procedures versus during this pandemic, how you've also been living up to that. Some of the, yes, and some of the current challenges that we do see is that we also have data privacy laws that have come up in various countries, Kenya being one of them as well. But when we look at them, they're not exactly uniform per se. So in the sense that Kenya has said something else, whereas there is another country within the region having different requirements. So we always tend to go for the one that is more stricter. That's the normal practice for that. And then also continuously working on strengthening our existing regulations, working and partnering with health authorities, giving them our ideas and suggestions, just to see what exactly how we can work together to already better an existing guideline or existing requirements as well. And this is cut across not just RA, not just PV, but also with RA as well. Looking at 5 years into the future, we also see a lot of artificial intelligence coming on to take over, or not per se take over, but also complement our usual day-to-day activities, such as reporting of cases, also an element of AI coming into signal detections for all the cases or adverse events we do report. So it may not necessarily be done at a local level per se, but a lot of global organizations taking that up, and also implementing software. So it could be something as simple as implementing software where you probably want to see your regulations at a glance, a very brief summary without necessarily opening the regulation itself. So coming up with something that has, or software, or implementing a software that could give you a basic overview of what you currently, and what the current existing guidelines are. Since we're out of time, I think I will stop there.
Okay. Thank you so much, guys. And I think going into one of the final questions, because a lot is coming out, even looking at the questions, a lot is coming out on many factors that PV and RA affect the industry as a whole. And I think now this is where we discuss. I would want you guys to tell us, what is the impact of your position, that is RA and PV, within the overall organization? Because mainly we find that these positions are within commercial organizations, whether it's in manufacturing or within the distribution industry. It's more in the commercial organization than in the hospital setup. So what do you feel the impact of your role within that, or how can you define the impact or make it better? Yeah, I think we could start with Dr. Eva, and I think the reason why I'm starting with Dr. Eva and talking about the different dynamics is because Dr. Eva works in what we call fast-moving consumer goods, FMCG, in an FMCG prone. That's where she thrives in. And then now Dr. John Mwangi deals a lot with a lot of pharma products. So what could be the difference there? So Dr. Eva, maybe you can start us off.
Okay. So it's actually fast moving consumer healthcare company, GSK.
Yes.
Consumer healthcare company. I mean, we deal with mainly OTC products, or products that you can say can be used for self-care. That word creeps into my conversation all the time.
And maybe before you continue, I saw a question
Hello?
Someone requested that you define self-care. So maybe you can also talk about what you mean by self-care as we continue.
Okay,
Yes.
self-care is the ability of individuals, families, or communities to promote their own health or prevent diseases or maintain their good health without the support of a healthcare provider. That's it. Yeah. So what I can tell you I do in my business is advise on the suitability of a product to be launched very fast. Because it's fast moving, we react to circumstances. So how fast can we launch? Most of the questions I get is, Eva, how fast can we launch this product? So most of the time, what they're asking is in relation to how fast can you register the product? Is it suitable? What is the risk of the uptake, right? So they ask me these questions often, more often than not. And my knowledge and my experience, I use my knowledge and my experience, and sometimes I also consult with people who have gone ahead of me, and I ask them, okay, you did this, you did this launch. What happened? It took off or it didn't take off. So then I come back and advise the company. The other thing is I act like as John referred to, I do a lot of external engagement, right? For the consumer healthcare companies. So it depends on which government organization. Most of the time it's PPB, KEBS. Sometimes they may ask me for my opinion with response to KPA, Kenya Ports Authority, or KRA. So you're there to be that person to say, okay, this product can come in without registration. The only hindrance would be KEBS and would be maybe Kenya Ports Authority or something. They may keep it there for longer, you know. So from a commercial sense, I actually feel that my presence in that company is mainly for the launches and advising on the processes, and also sometimes taking charge of external engagement. Yeah, but last but not least, as a leader, there is of course talent management, and just as you know, advising on who is the best place to do such and such a thing. So it's very important for us to know that Reg is not only doing a dossier and you know, putting it on the PPB portal or putting it in the TMDA portal. It's also that back job that takes, now that I'm a leader in that company, it takes 70% of my time, and to ensure that the processes are in place and that we are compliant, and that I give the best advice to the business. Yes.
Okay, I think we shall go to Dashi, because Dashi wanted to rush. But please, Dashi, tell us what you feel the impact of your role is within the organization. Yeah.
Thanks, Wairimu. Actually, I can stay on as well. Whatever has been moved. But
thank you.
Yes. So what I have seen, or what has happened after me joining the organization, it's about making PV more, it's not that it wasn't being done, yes it was, but you see, the thing is that PV cuts across everything. It cuts across a whole pharmaceutical company. What I'm looking at is it starts from contracts, contracts you have with your various partners, be it a safety data exchange agreement or an SDEA as we commonly know it as, or just a simple contract we have for probably a distribution, or it could be a distribution agreement. But there is, in each one of these kind of contracts, there is at least something that actually points out towards safety, or product safety, or safety issues should someone using and reporting to these partners. It's all about, it starts from there. The simple thing of starting from in a local setup, it comes from your contracts. It also has an impact on your on a drug being registered. I mean, when a drug is being registered, you have a lot of things that are set out as PV documents. When we look at our Kenyan regulation, we have areas where we do need to make sure that the QPPV has actually gone through the whole document, understands what is required, like, for example, risk management plans. I mean, and these are continuous documents that should a risk management plan change, it needs to be submitted, but does the QPPV understand what is required? I mean, what are the the risk minimization plans set out? Are they being done specifically for the country, or is it more for, if it's a global company, is it something being done globally? And how does this differ from actions being carried out within our country? So that's something. And then when we look at programs, we've got market research programs. At times, the marketing unit will continue doing their market research programs where they want to know, for example, how the drug is doing in the market, things like that. But there is an element of safety in there that we need to also be part and parcel of these discussions as PV professionals, as pharmacists, because I would like to say that as pharmacists, we know the drug much better than our fellow medics. We understand the chemistry of the drug. We understand interactions as well, drug-drug interactions. And that's why we are key as key professionals to hold the pharmacovigilance role in our country. And that's something I'm so glad that PPB has always stood for, that it is the pharmacist who will be holding this role in the company. When you look at, so basically, even when you're looking at marketing material, there is always, in most cases, we do have the abbreviated information, product information. We need to check, or we are responsible for making sure that if there is a new safety update, does that affect the promotional material? Is that clearly stated? Should it affect the abbreviated product information? Is that clearly stated within the promotional material? So there are things like that that we actually do hold. We do hold a very key position within the organization. Should the company decide to carry out a patient support program, who is the first person that comes into this? Or what's the first role? It's a pharmacovigilance department that will always be at the center of this. So we do have, from the legal department to our regulatory partners, to our medical affairs, marketing, we are the center of everything. Thank you.
Okay, I think we shall move on to Dr. John Mwangi. Maybe he can comment on the impact to the organization. Dr. John, can you hear me?
Sorry, I had muted. Yes, maybe I can, I just, so that I don't also repeat what Dashi and Eva have said, I think one of the ways I see it is we are there to be able to help our respective organizations say yes to a certain kind of activity that needs to be done, and not necessarily to police things around. So we are custodians of making sure that our businesses are running compliantly, but also to be able to provide alternatives which are also still compliant. And that way then we are fully integrated into the commercial organization, and it doesn't end up being like regulatory affairs is policing the commercial organization, but it's part and parcel of the commercial organization. So to do that, of course, you have to, you know, that's what I mentioned about earlier, that, you know, managing complexity and these kind of things, that it's not anymore enough to just say, no, we cannot sell this product or we cannot introduce this product this way, but what is the expectation? And I think this is what the regulatory professionals here do, is to give an alternative voice of how things can be done and still remain compliant. So on top of what Eva mentioned, I think this is also this is a little part that I wanted to add there.
That was quite
Hello?
fast.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and I think maybe Dr. Jayesh, having been with the regulator and in the industry, maybe now you can tell us the impacts from that angle, coming from that angle.
Yeah, no, a lot's already been said, and I can just say that, look, commercial organization cannot thrive, cannot move forward without regulatory, number one, and number two, immediately comes medical affairs stroke pharmacovigilance, or pharmacovigilance and medical affairs. So I foresee this happening even more. In my own organization, I can see that we are increasingly being invited for, whether we call them management meetings or leadership calls. John, myself, we are present in most of these meetings, and especially when a new launch is being taken up, then they look up to us and they say that, Jayesh, John, what's your thought? Is there anything that we are missing out? The product, yes, has been in the market for so many years abroad, but this is the first time we are bringing it into an African country. Is there something that we are missing out? What can we do more? So we are getting more and more involved in the daily business or commercial business from our respective professional input. And when I look at this, this morning itself, I've been contacted by the head of our business that, Jayesh, we've got a new distributor on board, and they've got their annual meeting where everybody is coming together, and they have reached out to us if we can work with them. It's going to be a quick 1 hour session. We would want you to talk about the importance of pharmacovigilance. And really, if you look at this from a different angle, we have turned a complete 360 degrees, where if it is not just access to medicine, but it is more of responsible access to these medicines. So I always feel really good that, yes, when I was a regulator, we were pushing that people kind of, please look up. It's not just medicine, it's the safety and efficacy of our medicines and healthcare products. So I see this becoming even more. It has already taken up a lot of our calendars space for John and I, Dershi and Eva, and I for this to become even more engaging. Risk management plans will come up. Our PSMF, Pharmacovigilance System Master File. These are important words or documents. If you already know what these words stand for, that's going to be taking up. So that's how I look at it, that without us, commercial cannot move. And if they do, they actually risk that they will flaunt the rules somewhere and then get punished by the authorities, or somewhere they will have a big bumpy stop into their commercial activities and then risk going back to square one. So that's how I look at PV and RA from my side.
So thank you so much, guys. I think we are very pressed for time, but I hope you've gotten the benefit of it. I think we'll just jump into the Q&As that we have managed to be able to see, and we'll start with the first one. Someone asked, there is no specific training within the country on regulatory affairs practice. PV masters at UN does adequately. The PV masters at UN does adequately capture the emerging PV, especially in drug development and post-marketing authorization. Can a panelist comment on this? And I think there was an answer from Dr. Catherine talking about that there's a program in Purdue. I know there's a program that happens in Tanzania in conjunction with Muhimbili University, and I can't remember, but there's a product that happens in Tanzania. And some of it is on the job. There's a lot of on the job training, but what I can actually say is it's very easy to find also a mentor within the industry who can also guide you through the process. I don't know whether any of the panelists, Dr. John or Eva, would want to comment on this, or Dashi or Koi. Any of us can comment, I think, briefly.
I can comment. Yeah, it's for sure. It's true. We don't have any curriculum. In fact, the other worry is sometimes the way the university is set up here is you don't have flexible courses where people could learn when they are working, because I think that's one of the major issues that I tend to see. However, all is not lost because like I think you mentioned, there are several online programs. I think there is also another one from TOPRA. Some of them come with some financial investment, but I think also some scholarships could be available there. There is that one for Tanzania. And it's actually currently fully funded by the Gates Foundation, I think, from this year.
Yeah.
And I saw it being circulated a while back in one of the WhatsApp groups for the pharmacists. I think it would be very good to try out some of these things. However, on the other hand, I think do not underestimate the value of hands-on experience. So if you have a chance to experience working so that you can have something tangible that you've worked on, I think it plays a big role. Even if you're studying also academically, that then you can make the connection between the two. If you have a chance to do both at the same time, for me, I think it's the best because then you're not only learning theory in school, but you're also practicing it if that opportunity comes your way.
Eva,
I can just add, yes, I have a comment. So I'll tell you about myself. So I was a hospital pharmacist, and at some point I decided that I need to move and do regulatory. And I think what happened at that time is that there was an opportunity to work part-time as a regulatory affairs consultant for a company then that was just starting out their scientific office. And I took that up, of course, knowing that I had mentors and coaches being my friends. And I maintained my job at the hospital pharmacy, working nights. And during the day, I worked as a reg person for this company, of course, on contract basis and part and part as a dossier, compilation consultant. That is the way I moved. So there's many stories into how someone can come into regulatory, but you have to have the will to look for mentors, coaches, and you have to have the will to learn, because this is not taught in our, as John has said, this is not taught in our universities. We just know the science behind the product. So we know about product development, we know about pharmaceutical development and everything, and clinical studies and all that goes behind that. But the other part of it is not done. So people find it very hard to switch from one to another. But I tell these stories everywhere I go, and I encourage everyone that you must look for mentors. You must, and until now, I have a mentor for reg, and so in every stage of life, you need that mentor. All right. So that's my issue.
Wairimu, maybe if I can quickly comment. This is a personal experience. My own university back in India, they for time immemorial always had a course on one, of course, bachelor for being a pharmacist, and number two is what they call a pharmacy practice. You become a wholesome pharmacist, right? So especially when we look at things like clinical pharmacy, right? They then had an offshoot and had a dedicated master's program. Now, I want to bring that back because when I visited them last, they've already reached out and told me, Jesh, we are coming up with a new course on being a regulatory pharmacist, being an industrial pharmacist. And if I bring that to the discussion that we have, as much as there are readily available courses out there, remember, this is such a dynamic field of RAPV that one, on-the-job training remains pivotal, and number two, we will have to continue with our own job. And I always go back to what I've always said in all our PSK conferences, and thank you for reminding me here. Pharmacists, people always say that you guys are useless, right? And I keep saying that pharmacists are used less. And I take this up to the same colleagues who are asking us this question. Can we take this up back to our own universities locally? Come up with a course the way that they have just come up with a pharmacoepidemiology and pharmacovigilance course, then this is where we need an extra offshoot on being a regulatory pharmacist. What are the key things that go in? And let's have this a digital course open to everybody, including you and I, so that we learn as we go on.
Okay, I think thank you so much for your responses. Dashi, did you have anything to say?
Yes, and just a small addition to this, and it's basically more to say that we as pharmacists, I mean, we just need the courage and confidence in whatever field we are, be it RA or PV, to speak up. I mean, we have the knowledge, yes, but we need to speak up for the organization that we work for to literally hear us out and know why it is important, whatever that it is we are voicing.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I think the next question was the self-care one, which was answered adequately. Someone is talking about being the focal person in PV in Kisii County, and they're requesting for RA and PV support. We are all here. We shall share our emails with you guys so that now you can reach out directly to whoever who you need to reach out. And I think
maybe on that one, if I can also add on that, you know, the fact that you are in a government institution requesting for support from us, then the ideal way so that we have all protocols observed in a very compliant way, I strongly request that as much as we are all willing to support, channel these questions, I mean, channel these requests to CAPI.
PSK.
Yeah, PSK and CAPI, right?
Okay.
And why? Because when an industry organization comes to you, you get that wholesome knowledge, right? And you don't get any biased knowledge from me at Bayer or Dershi at Novo, not like that.
Yeah.
Right? We give you, of course, we are all professionals, we don't do that, but yet this is a very compliant way, and for our audit purposes and inspection purposes, you get exactly what you want from the leaders in the market.
Yes, I think what we shall do, I think we have someone from PSK presenting, and definitely we shall relay that information back. But in addition to that, I wanted this question to go hand in hand with question 6, with how can pharma industry players assist counties to improve uptake of PV activities within healthcare professionals. And I think the best person to answer this is Koi. Koi. Oops, sorry, I was muted.
Koya is still there. I would want you to share your experience with this. And then also Dashi and Jayesh could probably add on to it.
All right, thanks. So how the industry players can assist counties improve uptake of PV activities within the healthcare professional is, one, I know for sure the University of Nairobi has been providing training, the pharmacovigilance and pharmacoepidemiology training, and I know most, if not all, most of the students there are already pharmacists practicing in the public health. So the pharmacists who end up doing the PV course, once they get back into their facilities, once they're posted back into the facilities, they end up being, or they should end up being, the primary contact points between the counties and also with the pharma industry individually, especially when it comes to safety reporting. It is expected that safety reporting ideally should also be going, especially from the public sector, should be going directly to PPB. But what happens is the pharma industry, in most cases, ends up missing out on receiving those adverse events. So this is a best platform, as you've seen, we have Dr. Jayesh, we have Dr. Dashi. The PV community in Kenya is growing in the industry. And these people are readily available to answer directly whenever there's a safety query or a safety issue that has been picked up from the county. That could be one way of doing it. Another, just not to touch so much into what has been discussed previously, could also be through training, and just like Dr. Jayesh has mentioned, training becomes requesting for training also becomes a big issue on how it needs to be conducted, because all the players need to be brought on board. And what I mean by the players is, for it to be more hands-on information, hands-on training, we may require to also bring in experts, meaning industry expert, probably having Dr. Jayesh on board, Dr. Dashi and others, bringing guys in the regulatory industry as well, regulatory affairs that we've had over here. We also need to bring in the health authority as well, and as well the players now from the county pharmacy, from the county government, so that now there is wholesome engagement and in a compliant manner. I hope I've been able to answer that well.
And if I can comment on this, I remember there was an uproar about some counties not employing more pharmacists, or there was some discussion the other day. And when I spoke to one of the key people, asking them why, they said that pharmacists need to show more value within the counties. So the example they gave is that they don't even have ADR reports. They don't know what happens with the medication that is used by their patients. So there's actually a need for counties, and thank you for bringing up this, there's actually a need for people in the counties to actually practice some of these things. That was one of the examples that was given. And I think hand in hand with that, as what the PV panelists answers any question, I would want them to also answer the question on this whole sensitization of HCPs and AE reports, yeah? And how do you shift the focus on sensitization from HCPs to patients to empower them for their own safety in relation to medication use? Because they feel that HCPs feel overburdened with work. Yeah. And I think maybe one of the things I can say, it's about empowering HCPs and letting them know what is the impact of PV reporting or AE reporting to the pharma or to the improvement of care of their patients. But maybe one of you can take up that question. Yeah.
Yeah, very much. Sorry, just a quick feedback on how counties can do this even better. I give you a practical example from one of the counties where we as a company have been engaging with some of our leading medicines. So, for example, you as the pharmacist in the county, right? You come up with a very novel, unique niche of what you would like to understand more. So, for example, if you come up with a coagulation clinic, okay, you come up with something to do with anti-infectives. You come up with something very unique in the times of contraception, right? And come up with more strategies where a pharma company can bring in a patient access program, a patient affordability program, right? Now, when we work together with you, I give you that example of what has happened. As much as we work with you, everybody in your pharma department and cross-functional in your hospital benefits, right? So there is the learn and learn two-way from us and you. You shine because you have taken up this leadership in your county. And really speaking, we will find you to become a niche away from the other counties where you are proactive for your patients. And that is where I believe strongly that we can work together and get your county rising up.
I'm sorry, I will rush through this, but I think the other question I wanted to pick and respond is the one, Samuel, where I asked where do they, or I think it's supposed to be why, where do they edge out pharmacists, or why do they process, what do they possess to warrant such a gigantic control on pharma products? I don't know whether Samuel Were is a pharmacist, but I think a general answer to that is number one, global practice demands that the responsibility of products is held by the pharmacist. So the overall risk is put on the qualified person who is the pharmacist. Number two, it is the nature of the practice. So I guess if you're a lawyer, if you're in the law, if you're in law, you have the lawyer having the control over the legal issues. If you're an engineer, you have engineers dealing with engineering issues. And if you're in pharma, you have pharmacists dealing with that issue. The next question is, how can pharma, I think that one we've responded. So there's someone talking about ring fencing, RA and PV for pharmacists to be a pharmacy-only profession because we have other people infiltrating the space. Dr. Eva or Dr. John, are you still there?
Yes, we're still here.
Maybe you can. I think ring fencing certain positions for certain people is actually a very big topic right now. And I think I would want the people who are heading departments to actually discuss this because it's very controversial as well.
Eva, you want to go first?
Okay, all right, I will take that. So to me, as I said, what really helps me in my day-to-day is my background in pharmacy. And I have worked with both a pharmacist and a non-pharmacist in regulatory affairs. And I can tell you a pharmacist understands the ropes and what is required easier and faster. So in terms of talent management and training and understanding the science behind a product and communication and talking to health authorities, I actually think it's best to have a pharmacist because you're going to talk to pharmacists in the NRA and you're more likely to talk on the same wavelength, for lack of a better word. So about ring fencing it, yes and no. No, because we also want to enter other professions or other parts of the business that they think pharmacists cannot. They think pharmacists cannot. So when I think it's a matter of the talent you're presented with, right? The talent you're presented with to work with. As I said, I have a preference for pharmacists because of the reasons I have said. But when it comes to total ring fencing, I think maybe not, but it's up to the talent you're presented with. If it's someone who does not have any background in any kind of science, I think not. But I'm willing to also work with someone who is willing to learn and do regulatory. Yeah, my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. And fairly in agreement with your comments. I just wanted to add something that obviously times are really difficult and it looks like it's going this way. And it's true, the observation by the colleague here that some of the traditional roles that were played by the pharmacists are somehow going away, which is a sad fact here. I don't think all is lost also to keep us encouraged here. I think, like Eva mentioned, I think one of the things we possess is our unique training, which allows us, especially if you think about industry, to be able to do the job well. Having said that, there is also something we as pharmacists need to do. We need to get out there more. We need to be not only wait for, and I say this with all the respect, not wait for it because it has been my role in the past, but safeguard it. I think one way of safeguarding it is also getting out there and picking it for yourself. What I mean here also is when there are also positions which are, I would even say borderline, forget even now regulatory, and you would expect that the job can also be done by a pharmacist, even if you don't see that the job description is only saying pharmacist application to apply, but you also see, I don't know, health related degree, pharmacy, medicine, and so on and so forth. My observation is that pharmacists tend to shy away from anything which is not reserved for pharmacists. And that for me is a big problem, because if you don't get into that game, then you don't have the opportunity to navigate within there and then occupy the position you really feel need to be occupied by the pharmacist. It's getting more and more difficult to see an advertisement, not only for pharmacists, I guess even for the other professionals. It tends to open it up a little bit, because it's the realization that there's diverse talent out there. It's for us to actually go out there and prove ourselves, but also put ourselves out there to be able to do. If you see an opportunity to do an internship, if you see an opportunity to apply for a role which was not ring-fenced for a pharmacist in the application form, please go ahead and do it. And you'll be surprised once you're in there that you'll probably be able to do a better job than anyone else would have been given that role. My 2 cents.
Isaac, please go on mute. Isaac Matuku, please go on mute.
All right, thank you for that, John. Jayesh, you have something to say before we wrap up?
Yeah. Wangui, I was just thinking on this as well, and reinforcing is as much as it is very important. When we try and copy guidelines and legislation from foreign countries, this is where I guess we fail, right? And I'll give you a classic example. We really tried that. Pharmacovigilance remains, for example, the domain of a pharmacist. And that way we continue giving more trainings and education and programs and university degrees for pharmacists. So a key important thing here is, one, it has to be led by the regulator. If the regulator puts it into law, then yes, we as pharmacists are covered. But notwithstanding, again, to our county colleagues, right? If this is where it came from, then you as a pharmacist, you take up a lead, right? You get better at pharmacovigilance. For example, you do the pharmacovigilance, what you've been taught by the PPB, you implement a good system in your hospital, get better at it. Right? As much as you keep getting better, you collaborate. The other doctors, the other nurses, the other COs, the other lab people will see what you are doing, how you are doing, and why you are shining amongst all of them. right? And they will learn from you. Your other fellow pharmacy colleagues from other counties will learn from you. Your seniors will look at you, right? And then they will say, you know what, this, Mwachi, let this be done by John, let this be done by Dershi, for example, if you are in the county, right? And that way you ring fence your value, right? Why are you in that county as a pharmacist? You are not just a routine pharmacist, but you are pharmacy plus, right? You are adding value. You cross-reference, you give your presentations, and it's a very simple thing. I mean, this was what my research thesis was based on. All you have to do, document all the cases that you are getting, look for signals, look for trends, bring it back to your PTC, Pharmacy and Therapeutics Committee. Tell them what you are seeing. How can we further empower each healthcare provider within your county, within your hospital, for example, to report? And now, how is it that we can bring this to the patient and make that medicine safer even more to our patients?
Thank you, Dr. Jay.
Yeah, and I think as we wind up, what I would want to say is that it's a catch-22. You have heard that the employers, the people employing you or interviewing you, prefer a pharmacist, but you also need to prove your value. Number two, do not limit your movement to be within PV or RA. Yeah, you need to also explore the other areas within the commercial organization, because therein, just as Jayesh said, is where now you prove your worth. So if you see a warehouse manager, just go in. If you see whatever role, just go in, get in and maneuver your way through. Yeah, but the preference, they would prefer pharmacists. So I think that sort of answers the question. Yeah. And also, I think the last one is now how COVID has resulted in unqualified individuals handling HPTs to the extent of hawking in the streets. So is this not setting a dangerous trend as industry players? How can we safeguard the profession from this kind of infiltration? Don't we need a recovery plan? And I think, I don't know who can comment on this. My thoughts are where regulation lacks, anyone can go in. It's not against the law to sell a mask, I guess. Yeah, but I think anyone, please comment as we finalize.
Wairimu, maybe I take a quick shot at this. Number one, if you have identified a poor quality mask, fake or counterfeit item, whatever it is, right? Gloves that are easily tearing apart, complaints that you have received or you yourself have identified. Have you reported this to the regulator? Have you reported this to the place where you bought this, right? Document, do this. This is where it all starts off. If we keep saying that there are things like this in the market and we do not action, we do not report this, it's as good as anything else that has happened, right? This is my very first item. You have to report. Number two, report it to that pharma company, right? Put it on record and say that, look, there is a problem over here, right? And copy the regulator again with this. Take it up to your county level government and say, this stock of whatever that has come through KEMSA or through meds or through any other route, a private supply, is the problem, right? Again, if you and I take this responsibility, this will take us forward. As much as it is them encroaching, they're encroaching into our domain because they know you and I are sleeping on our job, right?
Exactly.
And I got this other very nice clip today that as soon as a baby is born, you are being given, it's a funny one, of course, but it's a serious one in the sense that you are being given an injection of one to keep quiet on all abuses of corruption in our country. Number two, you will turn a blind eye to whatever the government says. Things like that. If we take this up and report and make noise that this is wrong, then you will automatically open a door that one, you are a regulatory pharmacist because unregistered items you are flagging off. Two, you are a pharmacovigilante pharmacist. You are vigilant on items that are happening in your county, in your hospital, in your pharmacy. And three, what you need to then do is collaborate, bring it up to PSK, bring it up to PPB, and say, guys, we have an issue. How can we come out of this? The more noise you and I will make, we will ring fence again our role. And that will open the role of one, look-alike, sound-alike medicines, right? When we talk about counterfeits, substandard, poor quality medicines, if you do this at your institution and raise it, copy the PSK, copy PPB, bring it up in such PSK annual conferences about your experience, do a presentation on this. I think this is the real outcome that we wanted from this plenary session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi.
I don't know. I think going. Oh, Dashi. Sorry.
Dashi, then
Sorry.
yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to add this to what Jayesh said, and also the discussions we've been having about how we can bring, PV, how our HCPs or patients more aware of, that what's wrong and how do we empower them. It's also more like if you're in a county hospital, for example, and you've taken up, you're driving the PV, within your hospital. You've got the courage to take it, run it, keep going with it, and keep on sensitizing those the other healthcare providers around you, and it will slowly infiltrate or trickle down to the patients. So that they are more self-aware of that they themselves can also report, and it's not just the doctor who or the HCP that needs to report, but also in the same wavelength, you're also getting the HCP to take up their responsibility. We've all been to hospitals or seen a doctor where we do report, oh, I've been experiencing a rash, for example, but they don't ever take down notes, or they don't ever make that communication to the pharmaceutical company, or neither does that report ever go to PPB, for example. So it's these kind of things that they know they're meant to do, but they don't do it. But I think as you keep on pushing your agenda for PV, for patient safety, I think it will slowly get down to them that they need to live up to their responsibility as well. Patient safety is everyone's responsibility. Thank you.
Thanks, Dashi. So I think as we wrap up, as we come to the end of today's session, one thing I can comment on, as just like what Dr. Ogara has mentioned on the chat box, I think, again, whether you want to ring fence, quote unquote, your role as a pharmacist, the most important thing that we can advise you as panelists as well from our own experiences. Most of us have gotten to where we are because we have played a part in also ensuring that whatever we do is also highlighted. Recording what we do on a daily basis is important. And that is one way that people can find value in you as a pharmacist, in whatever role that you play. Yes, I know you're hardworking at what you do in your own facility, in your own center, wherever you're working. But sometimes people will never get to see that platform, will never get to see what you're doing. They'll always, for the longest time, most people associated pharmacists in the pharma industry as that guy who stays there in that corner there. They're never contributing to the discussions of the day. But slowly and swiftly, that has been changing. And again, just the little that you're able to do, the big things that you're able to do, you need to start highlighting them. Gone are the days where we were a bit modest, saying that, no, let my work show. Who will ever see your work if you don't record it? So my encouragement to us all is to record, report, do the needful, and also wherever you are, go over and beyond what is expected of you. Don't just concentrate on what your job description is.
Ndio namaliza.
Create value. Yeah. So create value in your role, so that at the end of the day, if your employer, yeah, I know especially during this COVID season, most people have been scared. The guys who are still in employment, redundancies are coming left, right, and center. Most people in the pharma industry, sales have not been going well. And the first thing people consider is, the guys having the desk jobs are the first ones to go. So I will say that should not be able to scare you. You should have confidence in what you do. And with that, I wish to thank everyone who has been with us. I would like to take this opportunity to thank PSK for giving us the opportunity to host this event with you guys, for the panelists, for the dedication that you have taken, Dr. Jayesh, Dr. John Mwangi, Dr. Eva Amwai, Dr. Dashisha, Wairimu, my co-host. Thank you, everyone, for all that we have been able to do till this far. I would like to let you guys have back your lunch. I know you don't have a lot of time, but I wish we'll be able to have more discussions like this. And with that, it's a wrap from us. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.